Empaths, welcome back to my channel and back to Journey Through the Tarot. This week we're talking about our experience with the Six of Wands. Really interesting week. And then introducing the history, symbolism, and divination of the Seven of Wands. Ushering in a week with that one. This journey is inspired by Dirty and Divine by Alice B. Grist. A transformative journey through tarot. She spent a day with each card. We're spending a week with each card. Getting a lot of my information from one of my tarot teachers, Robert M. Place, the tarot history, symbolism, and divination. And we're working with the Waite-Smith symbolism and the Rider Tarot deck. So if you need any of those items, they're in my Amazon store, which is linked in the description of this video. I do get compensated for any purchases there. So just to be transparent about that. And anything else? If you're interested, I think it does have meaning if you're popping in and out of different cards. If you just feel called to look at certain cards, for whatever reason, right? Whether it just be the energy of the thumbnail or the image of the card or the name of the card, right, that you're drawn to. So, and there's meaning if you just see the reading, the weekly video in your feed, I believe, right? Divination comes in all forms. There's meaning. We can find meaning in anything if we look closely enough, right? So, week with the Six of Wands is very interesting because I did have a lot of triumph and victory over mostly myself. As I was saying, I feel like the minor arcana are working with the micro, right? Working with the micro in that the major arcana means major events. And so we were dealing with a lot of world events when we were dealing with the major arcana. And with the minor arcana, it's more I'm finding it's occurring within me for the most part, as well as within my friends. Like I can see it happening for them too. But for me personally, it's a lot of inner change, inner shifts. And I think that when you're on a healing path, an introspective healing path, that's where you're looking. So I can see that. Maybe I'm just assuming it's a bigger shift than it is, but so this week I booked a new client that I had never met before. Ended up having a couple of sessions in one day, which was very felt like a victory for me because I am healing a lot of conflict around owning my value as a practitioner. Even though I believe in myself, and it's not even about believing in myself, it's about believing in the systems that I'm working within. It's not even about me. It's also about trusting that I'm co-creating the experience. So, and I no longer, I've made a huge leap earlier in my path around not taking on more responsibility than necessary for the healing of the client, which is huge, right? Oftentimes when you're an energy healer, energy worker, or a spiritual healer, teacher, people come to you and want to hand you parts of themselves. And unless you've looked at that for yourself and those agreements, right, you might be tempted to buy into that contract. And so I had looked at that long ago, and I can sense when that's being asked. And I used to do that as well, right? I didn't understand that, that dynamic. So you really have to look at that, look at your own wounds, right? Because oftentimes you get on the path as a healer because you have wounding, and then you want to share that with others so they don't experience the pain you've come through. So I had to look at that a lot. And then I felt that I made progress with not having not putting my fears right about certain aspects onto a client. And if they felt they could book, they had the resources to book another session, to not worry about that for them, right? So, I mean, I've been feeling a lot of stuff happening in my solar plexus this week, and I have to say, I can imagine that that goes right along with this card, with the Six of Wands, right? Where do you feel that victory, that praise, that recognition, reward, achievement, forward movement to victory? Where would you feel that? Probably in the third chakra. So I was having a lot of interesting sensations there this week. And so I felt like it was stretching and growing, and my energetic boundaries were strengthening, and even some of the filtering work that we're doing here, right? That's why we're doing this. That's why we're working within this system of the journey of life through the lens of the Fool, right? The Fool's journey, and working with the archetypes within. Rich with symbolism from art history, and then taken over by the occult, using occult symbolism to work with these archetypes of life. So yeah, I felt like a lot of shifts happened around that, and seeing the work that I still need to do. And the work I still needed to do had to do with the second chakra, about not feeling like I was enough, about not giving enough, like not being enough. And then you give too much, and I could see why giving too much in a session might deter someone from coming back. And how problematic that thinking is, right? If you think, I better give it all to them in this session, give them my all in this session. That's the performer in me, Put it all out there on the stage and leave it, and don't leave anything left for yourself. That's kind of the performer in me coming up and showing up. I don't think that's the right part to show up. In fact, a part shouldn't show up when you're doing healing work. And I do a fairly good job. Like, I've gotten so good at staying in self, right? Self with a capital S in the IFS model. Higher self maybe, or right. The part that has a higher vantage point, very compassionate, patient, loving witness, observing, and offering tools or guidance as it comes up, as the client is working through stuff, kind of just guiding them through their sort of mental landscape, and whatever parts come up, right, sort of negotiating with them, to transform. And I really feel confident about that, because again, it's not me, it's the model. It's, and I can stay in that self-presence very easily for the most part. I just noticed this small thing at the end where I shifted. I got into a part. I got blended with a part that was the not enough part, right? The part in chakra therapy I learned with Onodata Judith, she would call that part the archetype, I guess, of that part, the oral. And it's a part where it didn't feel like it got enough. There was never enough. It wasn't enough, right? Growing up as a child. So it's a child part that's wounded. And that wounding is stored in the sacral chakra. So I know that I'm still healing that. I'm still working with that, but that illuminated for me. And I was like, that's the problematic thinking. And it kind of, it surfaced. It was illuminated. I was aware pretty quickly after I had done it. I was like, oh, this is part of the self-sabotage, Rachel. And it was like, it was sort of like, it was almost a celebration in a way, because I felt like I was facilitating healing for myself, because it was unconscious, right? It was an unconscious thing until at the end of the session, I was like, oh, if you give it all away in one session or two sessions, right? If you say, well, I got to give it all. First of all, that can be too much to process, too much to digest for somebody. And I already learned that lesson. So part of me felt like, great, you're regressing. But then I also thought to myself, but you needed to go through this to learn that lesson, right? To come to the higher vantage point of, the problematic thinking of, well, then they don't come back if you just give it all, right? And then when they don't come back, you think you weren't good enough. And you just keep telling yourself the same story over and over again. And it's irrational. It's not even true. The problem was the wound from the start. So that was incredible. And now I know where I need to focus, right? And to discipline myself, because it just takes a little bit of discipline to question that thought until it's gone, or acknowledge it, right? Acknowledge it, acknowledge what it wants, accept it, love it, transform it in the light of your higher self. So I continue to do that and celebrate the progress. So that felt like a little bit of a victory that came to surface, and I have an opportunity to heal that once and for all, maybe. There's probably another layer to it, but it's nice. And something that helped me see it in a way was a friend from the past, someone I had kind of been involved with from the past, came back into my life recently, and which was an odd synchronicity in a way, but he basically just wanted to tell me he had a podcast. So I listened to it, and there was a part where he was talking about countertransference, and it's something I hadn't really considered. And then I can't remember the order of this. This is the weird thing about quarantine brain. I'm finding that my timeline is really shifted. I can't remember if I listened to the podcast first. I couldn't have. I must have had the session first. I can't remember though. I can't really recall. So, he talked about countertransference in that podcast, and then I linked it somehow because it's not exactly on point. That term doesn't exactly mean what I'm talking about. But it made me think what wounds am I showing up with? Not that I don't already think about that, but it just highlighted it, right? It highlighted it in my brain. And then as I was kind of reviewing or reflecting back to learn from the experience, I realized, oh, that's what I did. That's how the wound was still affecting me. It's also interesting because that wound really affected this connection, this relationship that I had with this person. And it was really amplified in that connection, and it was, it cut really deep into it. In fact, when I was, because I had just talked about with the Four of Wands coming into the state of stability, and I was able to release someone from the past, more recent past. And then this person came back in, and it was interesting because the person I had released had a very similar name that looked very similar. And I had to grapple with a little bit of residual pain that was still lingering there. And it kind of came up, and I was trying to not get sucked in to anything, because it was sort of like a test for me, like what's going to happen here, because I don't trust my feelings always, particularly with this person. So I was just feeling it out, and after I had this initial kind of release of it was almost like exhale of relief that I wasn't getting sucked in to anything. And it was a balanced situation. And it was sort of like we were testing each other. Like, I don't still have feelings, do you? Okay, good. All right, good. Okay, so it's just friendly. That can happen, right? From people, connections from the past. You're just sort of testing the waters. And after that release, it kind of balanced. And this lens I had always seen the connection or this person in before was kind of gone. And I think sometimes that can happen with karmic resolution with people from the past lives, right? Or people who have similar wounding to you, right? Or where the wounding fits nicely, it kind of dovetails nicely. So there's a lot of magnetism and attraction at first until this sort of romantic honeymoon phase dies away, and then all the wounding shows up, right? And I had never experienced it as intensely as I had with this person. And I really wasn't prepared to look back at that. I really wasn't. I didn't want to. In fact, it came up that I should maybe block this person because this time is creating all this nostalgia and people coming back. And I just thought, I can't handle that right now. Like, I'm going through emotional roller coasters. And right as I'm just dealing with the climate, I'm just kind of surfing the emotional climate of this time. I got a new lav mic, by the way. That's kind of a victory. I don't have to deal with, although this shirt doesn't really work with it. That's a nice little victory because I was using those earbuds and that was so annoying. So at least I don't have to be in my head hearing myself talk. So I had this thought come in, like, you should probably block this person because they might want to come back during this time. And I was just like, no, it'll be fine. And then that's what happened. But I was able to look at it. And I think that's probably better than avoidance, right? To really kind of really assess what's there in reality. And I think this person has grown a lot. So have I. So it just felt like, okay, it was kind of an assessment. And to feel like I can come out on top in that situation. I feel much more empowered now as a person, and I've invested so much in myself that the wounding wasn't really engaged. So at least not in the same ways, right? Like if it was very subtle and it didn't even come to the surface. So that was really victorious. I was also able to share music with this person. That was interesting because a couple of the songs I had actually probably used this person or maybe in combination with another as the acting work for the song. So that was interesting. I had actually had the opportunity to share music with the other person I was in a romantic connection with. And so I kind of had closure around that. It kind of came full circle already because he was a sound engineer and had his own studio and stuff and was into music. And so I had already kind of shared that part of myself with him. And I had shared songs that I had sang with him in mind. But with this person, I hadn't. So it kind of felt like closure in that way, of that full circle, that I transmuted it. I transmuted those feelings and experiences into art. And I mean, that's what art's all about. So that was a powerful experience. So a lot of emotions this week, a lot of assessing. It was Mother's Day. I spent that with my mom and my dad. And I feel like I navigated some of the enmeshment really well and Any attempts to get me hooked into something, I feel like I did a good job of navigating that, managing it, and holding firm boundaries. So that was progress. And again, I think this is about progress as well, right? Not just victory, but celebrating progress, because often it's not a destination. So I think I went on and on and on enough about this week. Did anything else come up? My friend who had moved house and had gone through some conflict last week finally signed the deal, let go of the old place. It's all finished. So she feels all moved in, putting things in their place, but it's a victory for her. She can finally celebrate her new home. My best friend went to visit his mom and sister on Mother's Day and went there with it's funny, coming out of the Four of Wands, he, I think, felt really comfortable with his relationship with them, felt stable. And then being there, went through the conflict again of all of the triggers, all of the hooks, all of the wounding, being all that sensitive, terrain being touched and poked and prodded. And when he was able to drive away back to his own home, 3 hours away, his own apartment, right, his own space, that was a bit of a victory march. So that was interesting. That sequence, right? That sequence of cards from the Four, where you feel really stable, to the conflict where, you come out of your comfort zone, to kind of assess, oh, okay, maybe this is why I feel off balance here. Look at the toxicity, look at all these triggers. So, and then remembering why you are 3 hours away. I thought that was kind of funny, but it was so in alignment with those cards. Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else that came up. Oh, and I was sharing with my spiritual sister, who's also a spiritual teacher and healer, and she mentored me a lot on my path, and still does, and has invited me to teach in her program, and I'm coming up with ideas for that. She does a pro crystal healer training, and I was telling her about how I felt after the session with the client and where I made the breakthrough. And I was just sharing that with her and how I can still see where I need to grow as a person and a professional, and, to grow more successful. And she sort of cheerleaded me and praised me and said she doesn't blow smoke up people's skirts, that she believed in me, and she wouldn't have asked me to be part of her school, her business, because she does not take that lightly. It was hard earned for her. She worked hard. She wouldn't just invite anybody. She just really believes in me and knows I can deliver on everything. And so, I say that because this card is about praise, right? And it's like building up your self-belief, and sometimes it takes someone from the outside saying something like that. And so I was really moved by that, and I felt really good about that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it with the Six of Wands. I don't think anything else really came up. So how was your week with the Six of Wands? Pretty interesting, right? It's about progress, right? So we think about victory march, having gone to battle, we survived, we come back, right? It probably wasn't perfect, but we made some kind of progress. and coming back to home base, right? A victory march back home, celebrating that this soldier survived, right? So thinking about that, let me know in the comments how your week with the Six of Wands was. Now let's introduce the Seven of Wands. It's so interesting, the sequence of these cards. So let's go to Robert M. Place's book to read up a little bit about, I'm feeling a little off mentally today, a little tired. Let's see. So the Seven of Wands, the Waite-Smith symbolism. One man stands on top of the hill using his wand to defend his position from 6 attackers. Only the attacker's wands are visible. The victory of the last card has now placed the victor in the position of having to defend himself from those who desire what he has gained. This is a warning not to rest on our laurels, although, as the attackers are not visible, this threat may only be in our imagination. Interesting, right? As I was talking about doing the deeper work with the wounding that triggers self-sabotage. Probably going to dig into that a little bit this week. Let's see. So for divination, what might it mean if this comes up in a reading? Taking a stand, putting your foot down, defending your ground, on guard, getting ready and prepared to battle and defend your turf, fighting for something. A young man on a craggy eminence, brandishing a staff. 6 other staves are raised towards him from below. It is a card of valor, for on the surface, 6 are attacking 1, who has, however, the vantage position. On the intellectual plane, it signifies discussion, wordy strife. In business, negotiations, war of trade, barter, competition. It is further a card of success, for the combatant is on the top, and his enemies may be unable to reach him. And then Alice B. Grist's intuitive meaning, sometimes life is an uphill battle. Other times you're stood at top of the hill, fending off attacks and difficulties from what feels like everything and everyone. You may currently feel drained by several sources. Everyone wants a piece. Everything is taking your energy. You are not sure if you can carry on at this pace, feeling like you are constantly fending things off. Here's the thing. You can and will cope. Make time for you. Stay grounded. Be around things that bring you joy and that keep your feet firmly on the floor. Don't allow stress of the situation to carry you away. This phase will pass. And when it does, you will see a myriad of learning and strength gained from it. I feel like that's already come up, right? These cards overlap as the weeks go by. And then the Biddy Tarot. Challenge, competition, protection, perseverance. After the success of 6 of Wands, you are now in an enviable position and are being challenged by others who want to take your place. You worked hard to get to where you are, but some people covet what you have and are prepared to fight for it. While it is flattering that they strive for your success, it also makes for a tense and competitive environment because you need to protect what you earned and must continually prove yourself. It is a sad fact of life, but the more visibility you have as a leader in your field and the bigger your audience, the more likely it is that you will need to grapple with this kind of pressure. Others see your success and will either challenge your point of view or want to take you down. In Australia, they call that the tall poppy syndrome. When the Seven of Wands appears in a tarot reading, expect to see an increase in haters, trolls, and people who disagree with you. You will need to secure your territory and fight for what you stand for. You may also want to engage a lawyer or a loyal support team who can defend you from any possible threat. The Seven of Wands may appear when you hold a contentious point of view or wish to voice your opinion in a public forum. Be ready to support your argument and back yourself. Stand firm in your conviction of what you believe and why, so that others do not topple you from your mountain of self-belief. Sometimes the threat or opposition may catch you by surprise, and you feel inadequately prepared for such a battle, just like the man in the card has rushed to put his shoes on and ended up with a mismatched pair. Interesting observation. You must scramble to fight even though you don't have everything in place. To be better prepared next time, the Seven of Wands encourages you to map out any potential threats or risks before moving ahead with your plans. That way, you can have a worst-case scenario plan ready to go. The Seven of Wands can also mean a challenge to the success of a creative project from an external source. Someone or something may get in the way of you being able to pursue your goals and dreams. While it appears to block your path forward, you can overcome this obstacle by drawing upon your strong self-care and continual self-improvement. Establish clear boundaries and then protect them so that others do not mess with you. Hold your ground and take a stand and defend your position at all costs. This will require courage and persistence, but you have the strength and determination to do it. Keep fighting for what you believe in and confront those who may oppose or threaten you. And that's what we'll be experiencing this week with the Seven of Wands, something to that effect. It'll probably show up more creatively than that, interestingly, right? Not exactly like that, but something like that. So let's use some sound to further integrate the Six of Wands experience so that we have that, right? We embody that, creating strong filters as well as emotional resonance to bring in more of that, and then usher in a week of synchronicities and experiences with the Seven of Wands. So you might want to close your eyes, get in touch with your breath. Beautiful. Coming back to the room. So I hope you're enjoying this experience with the archetypes of the Tarot, the Fool's Journey. Let me know how your journey's going in the comments. Thanks for liking the video and subscribing to the channel. That's really valuable to me. If you have any other ideas for other series, I've been thinking about doing maybe another book journey or book vlog or book reviews, something like that. Something with books keeps coming up for me as guidance. So if you have any ideas there, please do share. It's something I'm considering doing. And I hope you're enjoying the other content on this page as well. If you want a personal reading, personal session, or to donate to the channel to keep the channel going, all of those links will be in the description of this video. All right. I will see you in the next video. Have a great week. Bye, Empath.